So we've learned about whole steps and half steps when we were talking about how to construct major and minor scales, and I introduced the term interval when I was talking about whole steps and half steps. But I didn't really formally define it. So this video is about formally defining what an interval is and talking about how to figure out what the name of an interval is. Okay. An interval is the distance from one note to another. Okay, and there are two parts to an interval's name: its size and quality. The relationship between those two parts is kind of like colors. Okay, so there are categories of color like blue or red, and then within those categories there are different shades, right? So for instance, you might think of burgundy, right, as a shade of red, or garnet. I'm from FSU, so I have to say garnet as a shade of red. Size is kind of like the broad category, okay, and the qualities of interval are kind of like the different shades. Okay, so it's going to turn out that there are 5 different qualities of interval: major, minor, perfect, augmented, and diminished. Okay. Right now, we're only going to be concerned with, is an interval major or is an interval perfect? And if it's not one of those two things, it's something else, and we're not going to worry about it in this video. Okay. So we're going to figure out how to calculate interval size, and then we're going to figure out how to determine whether an interval is major, perfect, or just something else. Okay. So let's scroll down here. First, we want to deal with interval size. When you're determining the name of an interval, the first thing you want to do is always calculate size. Okay, so do size first, then figure out quality. Okay, calculating size is really pretty simple. All we need to do is count the number of lines and spaces that separate two notes, okay, and we need to include both notes in our count. So let's take this first one, for instance. We've got a C up to a G, okay. So I just need to count the number of lines and spaces between those notes, and I need to start with the C and end with the G, right? So C is going to be 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5. So this is a fifth because there are 5 lines and spaces that separate the two notes, including those two notes. Oops. Again, excuse my little kid writing. It's difficult to write on the tablet. Okay, let's try another one. Here's G sharp to B. So G sharp would be 1, A is 2, B is 3. So this is a third. And you'll kind of get to know the shapes of intervals, right? Like thirds will kind of always look like this, fifths will look like this. Okay. So far, we've been dealing with intervals that are smaller, or that are an octave or smaller. Okay, so an octave would look like this C up to the next highest C, right? Octaves share letter names. So we've been dealing with intervals that are an octave or smaller. These are called simple intervals. Okay. When an interval is greater than an octave, it's called a compound interval. Okay. Compound intervals can be reduced to simple intervals just by lowering the top note by an octave or raising the bottom note by an octave. Okay. But sometimes it's useful to know what the actual interval size is in the compound interval itself. So let's figure out what the size is here. So E up to A flat. So E is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so this is an 11th. If I were to figure out, if I wanted to know what this was as a simple interval, I could just lower this A flat by an octave. Okay, and then count the size again. So E, F, G, A flat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the size is a fourth as a simple interval. Okay, 11th as a compound interval, 4th as a simple interval. Okay, so that's figuring out, interval size. What if we want to figure out interval quality? For now, what we need to know to do that is interval quality. One way to figure it out is to determine whether the top note exists in the major scale of the bottom note. Okay. And if your answer is yes or no, that's going to determine, or your answer is going to be yes or no, and depending on that answer, that will determine what the quality is. Okay, so down here I've got a bullet point that says if your answer is yes, that top note exists in the bottom note's major scale. For any interval that's a second, third, sixth, or seventh, your quality is major. Okay, and again, if the answer is yes, for any interval that's a fourth or a fifth, the quality is perfect. If it's not, then the quality is something else. Okay, so what do I mean? Does the top note exist in the bottom note's major scale? Let me show you that. So here we've got B flat up to C. The first step in figuring out the interval's name is always to figure out the size first, so that's what I'm going to do first without worrying about the quality. So I'm just going to count. B flat is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I've got a ninth here, another compound interval. Okay, and then if we look at my bullet point down here, I've listed second, third, sixth, seventh, and fourth, fifth. So I've only listed simple intervals, right? But this ninth is a compound interval. So I first want to know what is it in simple form. So I'm just going to lower this C an octave. And now I know that it's a second. B flat to C is a second. So if I look down at my bullet point again here, I'm dealing with this category here, right? So I've got second here. And if that C is in the B flat major scale, then this interval is major, okay? So I've written the B flat major scale up above the staff here, okay? And we just need to figure out, is C in this B flat major scale, because B flat is the bottom note here. That's why we're dealing with B flat major. Okay, so you're dealing with the scale of the bottom note. Okay, so I'm going to look for C in the scale, and indeed it's right there. So that means that this interval is major because C exists in the B flat major scale. Okay, let's try another one. Here's B flat to G sharp. The first step is to determine the size. Okay, so I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a sixth. If I go down to my bullet point here, I look over and I see a sixth is major if the top note exists in the bottom note's major scale. So I need to know, is G sharp in the B flat major scale, right? I'm going to look up here. Here's G. It's not sharped, so that means G sharp doesn't exist in the B flat major scale. So this is not a major interval, it's something else, okay? And so in my homework, I'm just going to leave it blank in terms of quality. So I'll have the size 6, and I won't worry about the quality for now. We'll learn about those next class. Okay, let's do one more. Here's D to G. So this time we're going to be dealing with D major, and I haven't written that scale out, so we'll have to think through it a little bit in our heads. Okay, so first things first, size. So D is 1, 2, 3, 4, so this is a fourth. Okay, if I go down to my list here, fourths and fifths are perfect if the top note exists in the bottom note's major scale. Okay, so now I need to know, does G exist in the major scale of D, right? So for D major, our first note is D. The next note we need is a whole step away, so that'd be E. We need another whole step, so that'd be F sharp. And then we need a half step, so that'd be G. Okay, so G then does exist in the D major scale, so that means this interval is perfect. Again, if it didn't exist, it'd be something else, and I'd just leave the quality blank on my homework. Okay. Okay, so I think that summarizes intervals. Go try the homework and let me know if you have any questions.